This is the last summary for Patrick Lecture 179, which is Chain Reactions in the Dynamics of Creative Life Substance. And this module is called Reframing Problems as Challenges. Now, reframing was part of a movement or a modality called neuro-linguistic programming. And like affirmations, there is a dilemma with that, in that if a cause is active, then the effect can be changed, but the cause will still be active. The goal of pathwork is to find the cause, and then you can deal with the effect. It's relatively easy to deal with the effect. But if the cause isn't dealt with, dealing with the effect just becomes a game of whack-a-mole. So in terms of reframing problems as challenges, I find that there are examples in society, and several of them are how we now see male-female relationships differently, and how it has come up with the so-called Me Too movement, which follows civil rights movement and a movement about affirmative action. None of these are more important, less important. I'm not trying to elevate one over the other. I'm simply naming movements that took a while to develop and gain popular acceptance of any kind, because they challenged paradigms. They challenged our seeing disabled people as less than or not able to. It challenged our racial stereotypes, which all of us carry. The Me Too movement challenged how we view men and women. And this is not about women always seeing women as superior and men the other way. There's a place where when society devalues a certain person, the rest of us go along in ways we may not be fully conscious of. So these movements are disruptive to how we think. They're disruptive to the flow of how we normally go through life and perceive. And it can be irritating. And we can rebel against the irritation and blame the movement itself. One of the ones that is perhaps less charged is something that I struggle with on a daily basis, and that's pronouns. I have to remember that there's more variety in life circumstances, that people themselves change their pronouns. I find it difficult to constantly be aware of not using a pronoun for my personal convenience when it may be offensive to people. Now, some people will respond to that irritation or that extra chore by saying it's not necessary and I shouldn't have to, and it's wrong to question gender. And all of these may have some validity. What I'm pointing out is that sometimes this response is due to the irritation. It's an attempt to solve a personal issue by blaming the outside forces in action instead of dealing with our personal issues, instead of learning something that might be difficult for some of us to learn. Now, learning to open and widen our perceptions, reframing them so that they include more options, is about perception. It's about perceiving more. And in this 3 links of this chain in 179, you've got perception, attitude, and dealing with frustration versus being true to ourselves. So reframing your problem as a challenge will assist you in changing your perception, which will shift your attitude, which will then affect how you are, if you are frustrated or not, and also how you will find what is appropriate in terms of being true to yourself. Sometimes when a movement comes along, what people are surprised about is that they're part of that movement. But they didn't think of it that way until everybody else changed and they realized, oh, I'm affected also. I'm speaking specifically of people who call themselves in the closet. They've never admitted to themselves their preferences for partners or genders. Everybody else expresses it and you feel left behind. Oh, you mean you can say that? And come to think of it, I have something to say. I have something that I need to explore in myself. We can come late to the game. But if we don't widen our perceptions to see these as possibilities, even a slight shift can be impossible. That is, if we're rigid about our thinking, there's no allowance whatsoever. Will change be helped if the problem is not seen as insurmountable? Yes, the insurmountability with which you frame the problem defeats your will, drains the energy right out of it. If you frame the issue as negative, you won't want to touch it. It's negative. It's just yuck. If you frame it as self-defeating, if I deal with this issue, I will lose something, you're not going to deal with it. If you frame it as a false issue, then it's like creating a maze that can't be solved. You'll frustrate yourself, so you'll quit. So reframing something, we need to get rid of some of the things that we may have actually baked in to the issue itself without realizing it. These are all the underlying issues that pathwork attempts to deal with. So reframing something as somebody else's fault or responsibility allows us to abdicate. It's not our fault, it's not our responsibility. Or it can activate us to say, then I have to become aggressive because it has to be fixed outside me. And that can be an excuse to release forces that aren't needed, but aren't necessarily positive. So how you set it up in the first place is going to affect a lot of aspects of your being able to deal with it. We all have examples of positive and negative chains of reactions, and the negative chain of reactions can be very hard to identify, especially if there's an underlying thing there that we're not willing to admit. So this is, if you're interested in this lecture and this approach, then it may be because something is coming to the surface for you. If you're not, let it go and find another lecture. Feelings of doom, where do they come from? They come from having an insurmountable problem. They come from fearing that there's negativity in there before you've actually truly examined it. It comes from things being self-defeating, issues being framed as self-defeating, or it's somebody else's, I can't deal with people, I'll just have to submit. These are all, they push us towards feelings of doom and despair. And so this reframing of a problem as a challenge to be addressed can be really useful. Now, one of the participants in the meetings I hold said that they used an AI program, a chat AI program, to explore possibilities. And they said it was important when they ran through iterations, I'm presuming, it was important to tell ChatGPT to include silly examples. Why? Number one, it'll make the whole experience a little less serious. Secondly, we may not realize how we have judged something as silly and therefore dispensed with it when it's a real channel, it's a real opportunity or an area that we could explore, but we've crossed it off as silly. So it's important to hear those again. Think of this as the same science, the same philosophy in brainstorming sessions. I'm not very good at brainstorming with others. I tend to immediately jump into problem solving. So it's a real challenge for me to brainstorm with other people. I have to bite my tongue the whole time. But in brainstorming, the idea is to not negate anything, to put everything out and get every idea out there, and only then take a look at the feasibility. Sometimes the best idea is hidden under this probably won't work, but this may sound silly, but. So I've learned my ears pick up when I hear those phrases, because what that tends to mean is that the idea they haven't thought about it enough to realize its viability. There's a little nervousness about it being silly or stupid, but it's important enough where they want to mention it. And I find that there's a lot there if you're willing to put it out. If you have to put it out in private, that's fine. But the important thing about a brainstorming session is not to see something and then chase it down and make sure that it can be done or it's a good idea, but to allow some flow, to allow some another example of this is cloud thinking, where you put single words or phrases down and you just notice which ones match up or which ones tend to belong to each other, however you do it. But it's a way of, when you do cloud thinking, it's a way of not being linear, line by line, like a list, but more a matter of, well, this, and then I thought of that, and then I thought of that, and of seeing the connections without seeing a to-do, what looks like the equivalent of a to-do list. So these are ideas about dealing, how to reframe, why it's important to reframe. The key for me in this section was to develop flexibility, meaning to not be rigid about your ideas. And that's hard. It is. So that's why kicking things around and being loose or even silly with things can really help. The guide in one lecture says a sense of humor is absolutely necessary for this kind of work. It's important to see our craziness. It's important to see our self-defeating attempts not as doom, but as short-term solutions to long-term problems, and chuckle a little bit and move through it rather than become alarmed and afraid of exploring it. So short summary of week 4, reframing patterns, problems as challenges, and up and going to a new lecture in the next week. Thanks for listening. I hope you read Pathwick Lecture 179. Take care.